My name is Matt Fowler, and I am CEO and one of the founders of a company called Solid Earth. Solid Earth started way back in '98 to enter into a competition to build an MLS service for Huntsville, Alabama. And we published that system in the summer of '99, and since then we've published the listed system that the Realtor.com lady was telling you about. From then until 2011, when we released our new platform that we call Spring. And way back in 2011, 2010 really, we saw that open systems, interoperability, standards-based computing was definitely going to be the future. We also saw that NAR was investing in RPR, and while they didn't call it an MLS, I think most people thought it was back then. We certainly did. And we really stopped investing in what we think of as the back end and started investing in the front end. And we have now one of the leading consumer portals in the business. And what I'm really here to talk to you about today is a project that we started with FBS earlier in 2017. And the Spring system was the consumer portal for 14 or 15 cities. Our largest customers are here in San Diego. SanDecorMLS.com is one of our markets. DFWRealEstate.com in Dallas. MyBor in Indianapolis. Our largest site in terms of traffic is the New England Real Estate Network, or NARIN.com. That's a consortium of a couple of dozen associations that have consolidated into one MLS to serve all of Vermont and New Hampshire. And Michael Werzer called in January, I guess, or February of this year, and recalled the mid-year show back in 2011 where I released Spring and Michael released Spark. And I remember clearly going down the escalator at the Wardman wearing my brand new Spring t-shirt, and Michael coming up the escalator wearing his brand new yellow, as I recall, Spark t-shirt. And we kind of looked at each other like, wow, look, you're smart. You've released an API. That's where everything's going. How smart are you? And that was 2011, 6 years ago. And I give a talk to young entrepreneurs back at a startup incubator that I'm a part of back in Alabama. And the title of my talk is, "In Technology Early is Financially Equivalent to Wrong," which I can prove, and I can give you the bank statements to back that up. So 2011 was the wrong time to release APIs into the real estate space. So was 2012 and 13 and 14. You would be hard-pressed to prove that 2017 was the right time to release APIs, but that's what we've done. And Michael and I signed a deal earlier in the year to rewire the Spring consumer interface onto the Spark API, and that's what we're here to look at today. We're about halfway done with that project. And what I'm going to do, what I'm going to show you today is what we built. So the Spring system is a mashup of APIs that we consider best in class to create a role-based consumer experience. And by role-based, I mean that the site has 4 distinct audiences for the data. We have anonymous, we have consumers logged in and connected with an agent. We refer to those as VOW consumers. And then we have professionals. And the professionals are broken down by their member type that we find in the MLS. So we have content that's appropriate for consumers that are not logged in. We have content on the other end of the spectrum that's only visible to brokers logged in looking at their own data. So that's sort of from A to Z on how far away you are from the data determines what you get to see, what you get to do to that data, whether you see impressions, whether you can make changes to that record based on who you are logged into the system. So the Spring product is really 10 to 13 templates that are configured by role. So there's the landing page. The landing page has 4 versions, 1 for anonymous, 2 for consumers, et cetera. And each of those has 4 responsive breakpoints and landscape and portrait for tablets and mobile. So you multiply all that out, and you've got something like 100 or so template versions that drive the whole platform. So that's a little intricate, but not very complicated. So the listing detail page simply has 4 aspects. It shows one set of data when you are logged in as a consumer, and another set of data when you're logged in as a member. So the magic part, I think of it as the magic part of the site. The reason the site exists is to collect inquiries or leads from the public and to route those leads back down to a dues-paying subscriber. So the subscriber comes in and they see a form on the listing detail page that looks like this. It looks like normal. You all have these on your sites. And when the consumer fills that out with their listing, their contact information, it comes into the platform through a rules engine. So the brokers get to decide whether the listing agent or agents have a chance to pick up that lead. Some brokers have a business model where the leads flow back to a single leads coordinator in the office, and we support that. Or we support letting the listing agent or agent see the lead for a broker-specified number of minutes, after which a time that passes out, the lead rolls over to an office leads tab in the system where any of that agent's colleagues within the same company or office can see the lead and respond to it to make sure that the consumer is getting a timely response. And we have a success rate of about 50% of our leads overall are ever picked up at all. So when a consumer asks a question, it comes into the system, we drop the realtor a message saying, hey, pick up your lead, and we drop them another one every morning, and we drop their broker a message saying this guy hasn't picked up their lead, and still half of them spoil. So we've been trying to work out a way to do that, a way to fix that. And there are several ways to do that. We can hassle them more and build more nagware into the application that tell them to come in and recover that lead, and we certainly do that. But we have another more direct solution that we have built into the project with Flex. And the way that works is this is a little demonstration of how the leads flow into the system. The claim leads button is what they click to get that. And then we have a dashboard that shows you all your leads, shows you all your traffic, shows you impressions versus views, how many people have saved your properties to shopping carts or collections, how many emails have gone out from that shopping cart, how many of those emails have been opened, whether those are converting to leads that are coming into the system, and what that lead conversion rate is. So this is just standard digital marketing with digital marketing metrics in the dashboard. But the kind of exciting part, and let's see if I can actually show you this video. So far not. You know, there was a little play button on that when I had it on my deck. Can you execute that from the back of the room, or do I need to do that? It linked to a video. I'll tell you what, while we're thinking about that, I did think ahead enough to screen capture some of these. I have a diagram I'll show real quick. So the diagram is just really how this is working. So we have a Spring user interface and a Flex MLS user interface. Both of them are plugged in to the Spark API on the back end. And then through the Spark API, both user interfaces have access to the MLS information, saved searches, and importantly now, contacts and leads. So we've had the first one done for a while, the property search. You don't find it unusual to do a property search on an IDX site and then do it on the MLS and see the same list of properties. That's not unusual. What we're doing now, though, is we're going beyond RESO, and we're including impressions and views and contacts and forwards and reads and likes and favorites and all of those things that are engagement metrics that we need to know in order to evaluate whether a consumer is really active or not. So the magic bit is when a consumer sees that tell me more about this listing form on the listing detail page, they also have a big orange work with this agent button. And the work with this agent button, when pressed, requires them to log in. And the login actually prompts them for a username and password, so they have to create a consumer account and go from anonymous to role 2. When they do that, we are able to actually write the lead record into Spark on behalf of this particular agent, so it shows up in that agent's contact management screen inside Spark. So this eliminates the spoilage rate that I was talking about a minute ago. If somebody actually physically connects to, uses the website to connect their new consumer account to this professional account, we write their saved searches, we write their name, their contact information, all the information that came through their registration down into Flex. So instead of them having, flipping back one, instead of them having to log out of Spring or log out of Flex and log into Spring to get their contact information, we're simply writing it down to the same table. And I've been, Jeremy Crawford and I travel around a good bit together doing the Explode conferences, and Jeremy and I have both been struggling for a good metaphor for APIs. And plug and play is something you've heard of before. And we're really not quite to plug and play in the real estate world yet, real estate tech world. We are getting there. And I think I have another metaphor that probably makes more sense. And that is Gmail. So who has a Gmail address? Most of the people in the room have a Gmail address. So you know that when you go in your browser to gmail.com, and you put in your username and password, and your email list comes up, you've got a list of however many emails there, and some of them are read, some of them are unread, some of them are flagged or starred or whatever they are. And then if you leave your browser and you open Gmail on your Android or your iPhone, you know that the user experience is very different. You may swipe on that when you didn't on your desktop, but the list of mails are in the same order. The same mails are read or unread, flagged or not flagged. And that doesn't necessarily surprise you because you know that the mail standards are driving all this. That it's not really what your mail looks like. Your mail is a table, it's a database, a spreadsheet. And the user interface designed to connect to that spreadsheet can display it in all sorts of different ways based on the rules that are embedded in IMAP or in the mail protocols. And what RESO is doing is it's imposing the same rule-based standards on the underlying tables so that I can build a Gmail reader for you that looks a little different than the other guys, that has other functionality than another user interface. And you get to pick from however many different choices you'll see a year from now. I predict there will be 50 new real estate technology companies at the trade show in wherever we are next year, Anaheim or someplace, San Francisco, I think. There'll be 50 new ones because the flatness of this data, thanks to the long, tireless work that RESO has done, has built this Gmail-like repository for not just the property information, but now extending beyond the property information into your CRM. So where we are with the Spring project, the Spring on Spark project, is that we're right at the end of phase 2 and getting ready to start phase 3. Phase 3 involves wiring up the collections so that our listing timeline will reflect the timeline that we found in Spark and turn on drip marketing. Phase 4 is add edit. So add edit and update are supported currently in the Spark API. And there are a few little pieces left. We'll get to that the end of February-ish on our current velocity. So Spark users in 180 cities across the country will be able to opt into an MLS portal for their MLS and use Spring very tightly integrated to their underlying FBS system. And then a little foreshadowing for news tomorrow. We have a press release coming out tomorrow that was just approved that is announcing a partnership between Solid Earth and RPR AMP. And we are embarking on a new 40-week project, very, very similar to the Spark project, wiring Spring up to the new AMP API. We have 2 MLSs that have committed to us to convert to AMP when all the functionality is there sometime middle next year. And we think that this is just 2 sides of the same coin. It's the same project. My company had been in the front end and back end business, and now we're really becoming primarily a user experience company, building API-based user experiences for RESO-inspired APIs. So I actually thought I'd be using my computer today for some reason and have a live demo of actually clicking the orange button and seeing my name inserted into a Spark contact manager table. I think I won't bother rewiring the lectern here and messing all that up. I'll just let you trust me that that's actually working. If you'd like to see it, my name show up as a new Spark contact, come see me after the meeting and I'll actually show you it works. But I'd like to stop for a minute. I see some customers in the room and some partners and see if anybody has any questions about what this looks like in practice. Yes, sir.
How do you deal with non-FBS software vendors? So we're in New Mexico. We're in FBS in Albuquerque, but we're trying to do a statewide. There's Paragon.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's a really interesting question, and it's not terribly difficult to stage a product like Spring in that environment. And let me give you a specific example for New Mexico. As I recall, there were 2 Flexes and 5 Paragons. The data for the Paragon systems in an API environment would be imported into our database, and we would serve property searches for those markets out of our database. And if a query occurred cross-market, we're still able to handle that. So it would go out as an API for, I won't get too technical here, but it would go out as an API call for those markets that supported the API, and as a local API call for those markets that didn't support an API. So it's essentially, Spring is API driven no matter what, and we have to populate our own API with foreign data if we don't find it in an API format. So in that, the way it hits the field, though, there would be functionality possible for those users that were in Flex markets because of Spark that wouldn't be possible in those markets that didn't have an API that would support those methods. Impressions, for example, contacts, for example, pushing the orange button in a CoreLogic or a Black Knight market would just cause us to write that prospect data down to our database, and you'd have to log in to get it. We wouldn't be able to put it where you already were inside your MLS system just because of the lack of support for that method. It's possible to do it. It's a little more complicated, and it certainly creates an uneven playing field on a user-by-user basis. But unless you log in from Las Cruces and then you go out to Albuquerque and look at that user experience, you wouldn't know it was different. Any other questions out there about Flex or AMP or Spring? All of our sites are public sites, of course, so if you go to solidearth.com, you'll see a full list of them, and you can go play around with those. Okay, so I think we have another speaker after this. Jeremy's going to come up and introduce them. And since you paid such close attention, but I did see people on your news feed, I will give you one more bad joke. I was not going to be here on time. I got held up at the airport. There was this really old lady in front of me in the security line, and you know, she was 95 if she was a day. And I finally got up there and asked the guy why you were harassing this really old lady. I mean, are you profiling old ladies? Are they blowing up stuff now? And he said, no, sir, but we did find that she was carrying knitting needles, and we were afraid she would knit an Afghan. It's really terrible, isn't it? All right, thank you for listening, Jeremy. Thanks a lot.